Well, where do I even begin? Not gonna lie to you. Where do I begin? When we talk about Mike Gundy getting fired because he just got fired from Oklahoma State. After losing to Tulsa, it is what it is. At this point, it's like, what else can really be done? I mean, Oklahoma State, under Gundy has really had, only maybe a couple seasons of real success. 2011 being the biggest example. Um, to be quite honest with you, I thought Gundy was going to be at Oklahoma State forever, but I think losing to Tulsa was the last straw, and really it should have been, honestly, honestly, Gundy could have stayed there forever, or he could have been fired, anytime the last 2 years. There have been some bad years for Oklahoma State, on the field, and it's finally over. So another college coach has been fired. Barely, we're barely finishing up September here. We're about to finish up September. Like, you're telling me another college coach has been fired? It's crazy. So yeah, week 4 was an intriguing one. Will Hammond and the Texas Tech Raiders, decided to just mollywop Utah in the fourth quarter, show some muscle out in the fourth quarter. It was a tough game at first, but ultimately, you know, I'm sitting here completely surprised that NIL money is doing wonders for Texas Tech. Doing wonders, doing wonders. TCU is ranked. I don't think I expected them to beat SMU the way they did, but they did. Um, you know, Oregon just beat the brakes off of Oregon State. Like, Dante Moore has been on a heater. Honestly, the only guy I guess right now that you could say is, like, I can honestly see this guy being a Heisman, finalist, because honestly, nobody is impressing me so far. Like, nobody's impressing me. Now, Auburn had a chance, in this game against Oklahoma. Auburn had a real chance to win this game. There was a penalty that did not go their way, that should have went their way. And then, Jackson Arnold got sacked 10 times, which isn't a recipe for success. And I would say John Mateer is also, like, right there. He's really done as much as he can do, despite the fact that Oklahoma has no run game at all. And it's really been him running the football that has made the difference in these games. Dylan Raiola, Patrick Mahomes' clone, could not overcome the Michigan Wolverines. Justice Haynes has been on a tear too, so I would definitely put him. He's ran for like a 75-yard touchdown at least twice. This season. It's just wow. Guy can run the ball. Ole Miss, this time, this Ole Miss team is different. Austin Simmons has been out and Trinidad Chambliss has been in, and they just beat the brakes off of Tulane like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. This Ole Miss team is dangerous. What do you mean? What do you mean they are the way that they are? And with things being the way that they are, it's like, whoa, Ole Miss has a sneaky good chance to be doing some damage, later on. Like, taking care of business is what they were supposed to do. I think people expected Tulane to do a little bit better than that, but it is what it is. It's just like, this Tulane team, still has a chance. There's teams like, there's teams like UNT that are, just still doing their thing. Like, I don't know. Because, like, the G5 race is just something, like Patchwell's not going to be in it, and like the CUSA maybe not, but like I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll talk about that, as time goes on. Missouri, they also have a pretty good running back, missed Mr. Ahmad Hardy, who's really been on a tear the past couple weeks himself. Bo Prabula, he transferred from Penn State. He's been serviceable. Lenore Sellers was still Lenore Sellers. He did what he could, with the 2 touchdowns he had. But again, there were some plays made late by Missouri that allowed them to overcome South Carolina, and it just is what it is. Billy Napier hasn't been fired just yet, but a strong second half from Miami, easily the Hurricanes took care of Florida in that second half, and then Indiana I don't know what in the world this was against Illinois. Like, this was a beating of all proportions. We're talking Fernando Mendoza had 5 touchdown passes. There was a blocked punt return. Omar Cooper has been on a tear. Elijah Surratt is still there. And then there's guys. And then there's other guys on that Indiana squad too. Like, this Indiana squad can move. They can move, and I don't think anybody expected this at all. From Indiana, but they did what they did. And again, Fernando Mendoza is one of those guys from last year that was really talented, and now he's showing what he can really do in Indiana. Again, showing what they really can do, because now they're ranked at the top. They're ranked in the top 15. Really, they should be ranked, top 10, but they're going to be number 11 right now. And a lot of people are, getting mad at the AP poll and stuff like that. Well, Illinois should be ranked, and Notre Dame's still in there, despite them having 2 losses and everything like that, and yada yada yada. It is what it is. Not a single Group of 5 team ranked right now either. So, it is what it is. Can't really complain about it. Basically, anything else is that USC, that offense is, my goodness. Jaden Mayava, he is really, one of those guys. Makai Lemon, catching passes from Mayava, really, really fun USC offense. And they have Illinois this week, so it's going to be Luke Altmaier and the Illini trying to get themselves back into things against USC. Again, USC has a really, really good offense, really fun offense. Defense, obviously they beat Michigan State. They, allowed Michigan State still to get 31. There was probably some garbage time points late in that game, but honestly, that is a cause for concern. Let me tell you, that is a cause for concern in a way. Georgia Tech, another team that is like, we gotta do something. We gotta do something. Auburn, having to bounce, potentially bounce back against Texas A&M. Jackson Arnold versus Marcel Reed should be a fun matchup. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna compare nicely with Ohio State being the number 1 team in the country taking on Washington, who is undefeated, which is very surprising, to be quite honest with you. But Washington beat the brakes off of Washington State, just this past week, put up 59 on them. And, I mean, Ohio State, has not looked the part of a number 1 team. And then again, a lot of teams haven't really looked like a number 1 team, in the sense that they are, like, clearly cut number 1. This Ohio State offense has definitely been tested. Jeremiah Smith has been kind of a non-factor. People are making jokes, still. Well, can we redshirt Jeremiah Smith? And the answer is probably not. Why would you want to do that? That sounds stupid. Like, even if you were taking it seriously, that sounded stupid. LSU, that offense has to wake up. It has to wake up against Ole Miss. It has to wake up. And if it doesn't wake up, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. Like, again, Ole Miss is looking like a team that could be in the top 10, and they really should be. LSU, like again, Clemson is 1-3. They lost to Georgia Tech, and then they ended up losing to Syracuse. And Syracuse's quarterback is done for the year. Like, come on, come on. Like, LSU has to get this offense together. Their defense is good, but that offense has looked putrid only scoring 20 against, a Florida team, which, again, Florida has a good defense. That's why they, held Miami down as long as they could until it was just too much for them. It's just like, yeah, LSU has to get it together. Dante Moore, again, boy, that man should be a Heisman candidate. My God, he should be. And Drew Aller and the Penn State Nittany Lions have not impressed me at all. Like, I don't know why they're number 3 in the nation, but they are. This is a big time matchup, top 10 matchup. Game day's coming, big game on NBC. It's going to be a beautiful night. Pair that up with the Dogs. Gunnar Stockton and the Dogs taking on Ty Simpson and the Crimson Tide. It's going to be a beautiful doubleheader on that night. Beautiful doubleheader. Get those rabbit ears ready. Get 2 TVs. Get those rabbit ears. Get whatever you need. Get all your snacks, your drinks, whatever. It's going to be a beautiful night for Saturday Night Football. I'm telling you. Other matchups that are kind of there that are sneaky, interesting, like Tennessee, Mississippi State. Mississippi State is 1-0 in SEC play. Tennessee, still reeling after that loss to Georgia. I have to get it together. Mississippi State ain't no slouch, let me tell you. Arizona, they're interesting. The Big 12 is interesting. Like Baylor is, really in a good position. Arizona State's like 3-1. Kansas is 3-1. But Iowa State has to keep it together. They have to get that offense going. Arizona, may not be the perfect litmus test, but, it is what it is. And then Indiana, again, unbeaten. Offense has been looking really, really good. And Iowa is putrid on offense. So it could be very easy or it could be a trap for Indiana. You never know. But, yeah, as we finish up September, there are more questions than answers. There are really a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't think anybody's going to answer them right now. Like Memphis is 4-0, beat Arkansas, who's playing Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses another game, you might as well put them out of the playoff race because, it's Notre Dame. Really, Notre Dame's schedule isn't really that strong anyway this year. They already lost 2 important games. Who will be that big, that group of 5 representative? Really, we're looking at 1 this year, or maybe 2, if things, look the way they are. Because, honestly, the ACC's looking fine right now. The Big 12 can cannibalize itself at any moment. SEC's okay. Big 10's okay. I'm not worried about, those 2 conferences getting teams in. I am a little bit worried about the ACC, though, right now as it stands because, you got Georgia Tech at 4-0. Miami's 4-0. Florida State 3-0, with Miami, Florida State being the big one coming up, in a couple weeks. Louisville's 3-0. But a lot of teams suffer their first loss, like Syracuse, had a loss. Louisville, again, 3-0, but really unimpressive for the most part. Cal lost. And again, Big 12, same thing. Houston, Texas Tech is going to be big in, just a couple weeks as well. So, got to watch out for that. It's really a kind of a light week in terms of some things. But again, TCU, Arizona State is another one that you probably need to watch out for. Virginia poses absolutely no threat to anyone, like it's Virginia. It's Virginia, bro. Like, who cares? So, week 5 is gonna be interesting. I can't really wait to see it because it's fun. It's gonna be a fun one. But I don't know. I don't know where we stand because there's so much going on. Like, Texas is still struggling too on offense. A lot of teams are really struggling on offense. There's a lot of teams that are really good at offense, but it's like something else is like, holding them back. And then, the teams that are struggling on offense have really good defenses. And then there's really no Heisman, candidate that is like, oh, okay, yeah, you are definitely the obvious fave. And it's like, that's one thing that's also been on my mind too. Like, who in the world is leading the way for the Heisman? Because it ain't Arch. It ain't Arch Manning. And it ain't some of these other guys that y'all, hyped up either this year. So, I don't know. But yeah, week 4 done, over with. Week 5 ready, locked and loaded. It begins Friday night, some beautiful matchups, here, TCU, Arizona State being one of them big ones. And then Saturday, a whole Saturday slate, to keep you occupied from sun up to sundown, including BYU late at night, as well. So from me to you, I'm going to get on up out of here and talk some more, football, later. So goodbye, everybody.